This commentary today, again, is going to be Dr. Phil, touching on the topic of Oregon admits that its decriminalization of drugs was an epic failure. So it's about time someone, in the media took notice to this problem in Oregon. And no one better than Dr. Phil.
Well, Portland, Oregon has been described in the past as a major city with small town charm. It was a vibrant city known for the arts, bicycling, live music, diverse cuisine, and social activism. These are the streets of Portland today, what some call a nightmare dystopia. Now, Oregon is admitting decriminalizing drugs has failed and is making a huge U-turn, voting to recriminalize drugs in an attempt to save the city.
For more than 3 years, the state of Oregon has conducted a brave and risky experiment to treat addiction as a public health crisis and not a crime.
Portland is one of the largest open-air drug markets in the world, but all that is about to change with this bill. So it's no surprise that the state has been facing a fentanyl crisis for the last few years, with many people using drugs in broad daylight. But now the Oregon House and Senate approved this recriminalization bill. But will signing this bill lead to even more issues in Portland?
Where you have decriminalization, you have a bigger market for drug use. And the drug dealers come in and they have people to sell to, and then they kill themselves.
One of the failures, people who were caught with small amounts, for instance, were issued a citation and then told to call a hotline, but only 1% did so.
The hotline was never advertised. The police were never given citations that were a uniform citation with that phone number on it. And law enforcement was never trained on what Measure 110 actually did. This really, truly was an implementation failure.
I'm joined tonight by lawmakers and also those who have been personally affected by Oregon decriminalization of drugs. Now, I want to begin with Representative Kevin Mannix, who was on the committee that proposed House Bill 4002 to recriminalize drugs in Oregon, and Senator Tim Cano, who voted to pass the bill. Now, Representative Mannix, you say that Oregon is in crisis because of Measure 110. Now, 110 decriminalized the drugs, right?
It was a $100 civil penalty. And the example I would use, you're a police officer, you come to a park, kids are playing, there's someone there with a needle stuck out of his arm, he's totally out of it. What can the officer do? Under Measure 110, write a $100 ticket and hand it to the person. Oh, and give him a toll-free number to call if he wants to get into treatment. No accountability, no opportunity to intervene, which is not compassionate, but also doesn't call for accountability and protection of the community. You could have kids in that playground right there, and there was nothing the officer could do.
Okay, now, this doesn't even make common sense. How did this get passed?
We have an initiative system in Oregon, so the voters had a ballot measure put in front of them by petition.
See, again, the voters voted for this.
But the sales pitch was, let's take the marijuana tax dollars and use those for treatment and rehabilitation of those who are addicted to drugs.
Straight into the politician's pocket.
The small print was, and by the way, we're decriminalizing all street drugs.
So
the voters that I talked to,
damn. The Oregon lottery was supposed to go towards education, infrastructure, our state parks, which nothing has gone to any of this. The only place it goes to is straight into the politicians' pockets. And America is allowing politicians to extort money from us that way.
After we said, oh, I didn't realize we were decriminalizing street drugs. I thought we were just making sure there was more money available for treatment and rehabilitation. That was the sales pitch. And unfortunately, we've recognized that the actual product was different.
Just like they use homeless as a way of putting together Ponzi schemes to get donations from people to help the homeless. But guess what? Do the homeless get that money?
Again,
No.
straight into the pocket.
Right into the pockets of the politicians.
Senator Knope, you say Measure 110 turned Oregon into a national dumpster fire. You had doubts about this from the get-go.
How many of y'all have heard me for the last couple of years say that the decriminalization of drugs in Oregon have allowed the rest of the country to have drug dealers from other states in the country come to Oregon to sell their drugs, and this is what they're getting ready to say.
And it's kind of like, you look at homeowners that have pets. They don't let their pets shit in their landscaping. They take them out here in the community and make a big litter box out of the town.
I've actually seen people, other neighbors, go to their neighbor's yard with their dogs and let the dog shit in the neighbor's yard, just to avoid having it in their yard.
Well, look at the guy in Grand Rapids. He came all the way around the corner.
I know, that shit was funny.
And then we dumped dog food out there. So
I know. Okay.
the dog will eat.
Well, there's no question that passing Measure 110 was going to be
What's up,
problematic,
John?
because if you're even going to have an opportunity to succeed in a
3-3.
decriminalization atmosphere, you have to have on-demand treatment. We don't even have close to that in Oregon. And it was bound to fail, because what happened was the cartels just jumped in and started taking over markets, and now we have.
What was that word? The cartels? Oh my gosh. I guess I wasn't talking at my ass this whole time.
They hit up Portland, Oregon.
Was the first place
ever since.
Yep.
At least five major drug cartels that are controlling a fair amount of the drug trade in Oregon. And with that comes human sex trafficking, human trafficking for labor, and all kinds of other criminal activity.
Yep.
It is clear from what you see, from what Portland was to what has become, is just night and day.
Well, I've also talked to people from around the country that said drug addicts from all over the country said, oh, hey, let's head to Portland.
Yep.
Tourism.
Right.
And that's what happens
Did
when
you hear what
there's
he
no
called
penalty.
it? He called it drug tourism.
Yep.
Because, hey guys, we can go to Portland, Oregon and get high as a kite, not get in trouble for it. It's like a whole ghetto version of Amsterdam.
Especially for drug use and a drug lifestyle. And we can't have the new compassion to be just drug use for hard drugs, fentanyl and the like, are just a choice that you make, and that it's okay, because it's not okay, because it's hurting everybody in Oregon, whether it's a family member, whether it is a community member. There's impact statewide.
This backfired in a really bad way.
Horrible way.
Set up a toll-free number for people to call for help, and it was costing us an average of
okay, and I bet you not one person called that fucking number. So again, the politicians knew no addict was going to call this number, but we're going to take this fund and we're going to channel it into this program, but we're still going to get the money, but it's going to look like it's going through here, but it's just going to go right,
It's like passing out Narcan.
Narcan.
Enabling. Just like everything else, no solution, just enabling.
$1,000 a call, because so few people were calling in to seek help, and most of the ones calling in did not follow up. So it was a fake treatment program as far as I'm concerned. 97% of addicts are not going to just say, hey, all of a sudden I want to go into treatment. They need to be pushed into it, so to speak.
Well, there's no question about that. Let's talk about the rise in overdose deaths in Oregon. In 2019,
Exactly, John,
Oregon
and
had
Bethlehem.
280 overdose deaths. It jumped to 472. Then the decriminalization took place, and then after it goes into effect, 2021 738, 2022 956, 2023
These are overdose deaths.
1683. To have that kind of increase is absolutely unprecedented.
Listen to that. In 2023, 1,683 people died from fentanyl overdose. That was last year, you guys.
And this was all under that fabulous
Nazi Kate Brown.
Governor Kate Brown
Nazi
of Oregon.
Kate Brown. And now her
Her sidekick.
has to come in and clean up her mess.
You just don't see that unless something dramatic has happened.
And the something dramatic that's happened is everyone know they can freely use hard drugs and there would be no real penalties.
But we're
Exactly,
looking here
John.
at 1,
Yep.
2, 3 years of
Tolling.
and in that time it more than doubled between 21 and 23. Were people shocked?
I think,
No.
I think Oregonians were very shocked because
They
that's not
voted
what they
for it.
signed
Why
up
be
for. I think they were
shocked?
sold the bill of goods with ballot measure 110. I think they realized it. And so Oregonians were the ones that were putting pressure on to make the change to
Why you read
recriminalize
what you
all these hard
sign.
drugs. And one of the biggest,
They're mad for something they voted for.
Fuck 'em.
I'm sorry, if I was here at that time when that would have when that actually passed
On the ballot.
and was on the ballot, I would have been like, are you people even thinking about what decriminalizing will do? It's an epic fail from the start. But nobody saw that. Nobody said nothing about it.
But thank you for killing our children.
Yeah. Our family members, you know?
causes
we
of
got
the overdose
cartels.
deaths is fentanyl. And
One
so
out for the
the
other.
leading cause of death between 18 and 45-year-olds in Oregon is fentanyl.
This had different centers, right? That you could go to if you wanted to.
You could go in for treatment, you could ask for it, but there was also a backlog because resources weren't being put more quickly into treatment facilities. So even if you wanted treatment, there was a long delay in getting into treatment. So we had a false promise here.
Were they being
false
funded
pro-
$11,250,000 quarterly?
That was at least how much was going in. And I think that we were spending a lot of money on treatment programs, but some of them were enabling programs, not treatment programs, which is come on in and we'll make sure you've got.
Like the methadone. Methadone is a prime example of enabling the addiction still. They don't wean you off if they up your doses.
Heroin.
Like,
My son was a heroin addict.
and he wanted help.
He wanted off. He says he was in so much pain, he just wants off it. And I questioned him. I says, well, how long have you been doing the methadone? It was over a year. And I says, shouldn't they have been weaning you off that a long time ago? He's like, my son was like, no, Mom, they're upping the doses.
Now, how many other people who have had a heroin addiction have done the methadone and has the same story? Did the people at the clinic up your dose? Put that shit in the comments, man. People need to know this shit.
Then
People
I
ain't
asked
speaking
her
up.
about a rehab place.
And I was just getting ready to say that part.
A
My
year and a
brother-
half plus. Okay, take over.
Oh, she already said it. He wanted help, and the fucking state told him a year and a half wait. A year and a half wait, you guys. Plus. For someone who was voluntary to go into treatment, they told him a year and a half. Bullshit, right, people? My brother would be alive today if a treatment facility was actually available for him.
A clean needle and a safe place to stay while you're doing your drugs.
Seattle
Well,
does that
reduction,
shit.
which works if you're measured.
Seattle does that. Canada fucking does it. Canada has special little buildings for addicts to go into that are clean so they can do their fucking drugs.
Of harm reduction is a clean needle and nobody overdosing while they're there. I've got some more questions about this. We got to take a break. Coming up, a local attorney whose sister battles addiction says she initially supported decriminalization and, in fact, voted for it. But now she says that ruined her city and isn't helping addicts. So I really want to know what changed her mind. We'll talk to her right after the break.
Put the needles in the yards.
What we were told, though, is that we would get access to treatment. People like my sister, many other people in Portland, which is bearing the brunt of this, we're watching people die every day.
Oops, didn't make it in the bush.
Go to Southern Oregon. It's not any better.
We literally had to get out and check the area before letting the dogs out. Literally needles everywhere, everyone.
Where do you stay?
Yes, that's for $5, a whole little chunk of pay.
That's Betty.
That's fentanyl.
Aren't you concerned about potentially overdosing?
No, that's just if you shoot up or something like that.
Drug use.
That's if you shoot up. I saw a video where a police officer pulled somebody over. She touched something in the car. Next thing you know, she was flat out on the fucking ground overdosing. Only if you smoke or shoot it up. So what, if you smoke it, you don't die from it? You don't OD from it? And of course they're not going to fucking overdose. You got Narcan rate. I hate Narcan. I'm sorry. Narcan is a fucking enabler. You just
Somebody wants their life to be saved, and they should get help. Get off the drug. Not turn around and go use it again because now they got a safe bubble.
Yeah.
Going on everywhere.
It's all over.
That's the blue. You're not afraid of the blues being laced with stronger forms of fentanyl that could make you overdose?
I wouldn't want to mix it with fentanyl myself.
So you got a blue, which has some fentanyl.
My question is, as a reporter, why would you want to stand around these people as they're lighting up? You see that, Mom? They're lighting up. The smoke. They're like, I think the reporters secretly want to get high. That's why they're like all hovered over the fucking tinfoil with the camera.
Laced at times.
Yeah, so the white turns red. It's called Red Dragon.
Red Dragon. This is the stuff that kids are getting their hands on.
Yeah, shouldn't be doing it.
If you think this is bad, you should have seen it last year. There used to be rows of tents. It was like a zombie, man.
Well, that is the reality in Oregon after the state decriminalized the possession and personal use of drugs in 2020. Now the state is saying it's time to reverse course. Now, I want to bring local Oregon attorney Kristen Olson into the conversation. Now, Kristen, you initially supported this.
Yeah, I'm a Democrat. I voted for Measure 110. I have a sister who is an opioid addict who struggles with homelessness.
You look like one too.
And so I had a firsthand look at addiction in my family. When it was presented to us, it was presented to us as treatment. It's just like the legislator said. Now, what we didn't know is that the fine print about treatment, according to Drug Policy Alliance, is harm reduction. So that's drug supplies, basically a free-for-all. What we were told, though, is that we would get access to treatment. People like my sister, people like many other people in Portland, which is bearing the brunt of this, that's where I live, we're watching people die every day. And Oregon was already the last, if not next to the last, in access to treatment. And unfortunately, with Measure 110, that never improved because it was just harm reduction.
Okay, but you say it was presented to you as treatment.
Yeah.
Did nobody ask any questions about this? I mean, was it just a big ad campaign?
Yes, it was. The opponents of 110 who saw what was going on were outspent like 10 to 1, Dr. Phil. The Drug Policy Alliance, which came up with Measure 110 in large part and funded it in large part, an out-of-state group.
No. So again, check it out. It's always the Democratic Party looking for a fucking Ponzi scheme to suck more money out of the taxpayer.
And she's up there acting clueless.
Yeah. You know, matter of fact, I think she is a bitch I seen on YouTube down in the Pearl District that they renovated and turned into nice, fancy, lofty homes now. And that's where one of the tent cities were in that area down there. Sitting, you know, I'm always getting whistled at by all the, you know, and it's her own YouTube channel. She had, if this is her, this bitch right here has her own YouTube channel, and all she does is degrade the drug addicts down there. Here on Dr. Phil, she's acting all innocent, like, you know, it's really bad. But no, if you go to her YouTube channel, she degrades the fucking addicts. She's being really
make a comment,
but you know the funny
Dr. Phil's attention. He goes to it.
I should. Dr. Phil,
this defrauded me on national programming.
Like, this lady has her own YouTube channel and talks mad shit about the fucking. And here she's on your show saying, I voted for it. Then don't bitch about it, bitch. You voted for it. Now you out here fucking.
Voted for this? Shut the fuck up.
Exactly. We should go. Oh, I should go find her and fucking bitch slap her.
Find her.
Hell yeah, I'm in Portland right now. I'll go look for that bitch. Oh God.
Common hypocrite.
That group is funded in large part by George Soros. None of this I knew at the time.
Oh,
really?
Please, everyone.
Oh
Why are people outside of Oregon pushing this so hard in Oregon? What's their agenda? What do they want?
They want a free-for-all. They want the decriminalization of all drugs. So Oregon was the great guinea pig. It's like a lab experiment. And Oregon was the guinea pig for this lab experiment.
Are you saying that the people that are pushing this from the outside
don't act stupid,
actually believe that decriminalizing drugs will work, that that's a good thing?
Oh, yeah.
Somebody's convinced them of this.
They're true believers. Yeah.
Do they not have?
Your people, Democrats, are true believers. You're the one that put us in this predicament.
It's you Democrats killing our family out here. Sorry, guys.
Have access to research?
Actually, no, I'm not sorry.
This is not a close call. When you look at harm reduction.
It's embarrassing that she's going to get away with her little lies.
Exactly. I will. I'm going to make it a mission. I'm going to go look for this bitch. I'm going to go look for YouTube, and I'm going to send it to Dr. Phil. Like, apparently you didn't check all her social media outlets.
Your hired help didn't investigate very well.
Maybe you should hire me, and I can do their jobs for them.
This has been done in foreign countries, but they push the treatment real hard. It's not
meaning people. The reason other countries have their decriminalization, because they do. You get busted with it, and you don't get $100 ticket. You're going to go to treatment, not jail, but treatment. But we don't want to do treatments in America because incarcerating someone's the number one money maker in this fucking country.
Same thing. Portugal is a completely different ballgame.
We were sold exactly that model. We were told by the representatives of the Drug Policy Alliance that it would be like Portugal. What we didn't know is that detox and rehab were not on the agenda.
Well, the Portugal model includes a number of things we can never do. First of all, they don't have the Fourth Amendment. In Portugal, the police officers coming upon someone with drugs can take the drugs. They can pat them down, they can search and seize right on the spot. So you do have the elimination of the drugs from the scene. You can't do that under our constitutional protections. In addition, they have got universal health care, and they have a system set up where somebody can get into treatment, but it's not enabled.
You know who doesn't have a universal health care system? America.
It's treating the addiction. It's also a different culture. You've got a pretty homogenous culture in Portugal. The bottom line is we have recognized that we're on the wrong path, and we're not waiting 10 years to get off that path. We're getting on the right path.
Well, God bless you for that. And by the way, detox is one thing, rehab is another. And even with inpatient structured rehab, that doesn't take, on average, the first time. This is a very difficult disease. It is resistant to treatment. It is subject to relapse.
I wish people would stop calling addiction a fucking a disease. It's not a disease. It's a choice someone fucking made. And then they got hooked on it. It's not a disease. I'm sorry. It's not.
It just doesn't pop up one day
And
you
it
got it.
Yeah.
can be fatal.
Ugh.
And people don't generally offer themselves up for treatment without some motivation. And I've spent my life focusing on why people do what they do and don't do what they don't do. And it's difficult to overcome the grip that drugs have on them sometimes. They need motivation. Coming up, we're going to add an advocate again.
And I'm sorry, I'm an open book. I'm matter of fact, a few more days I'm going to be celebrating 9 years clean. And as an addict, former, or however you want to fucking word it, it irritates me that people label it a fucking disease. Okay?
Drug recriminalization to this conversation. Why they say it isn't the answer. We'll hear from them after the break.
No, the Democrats need this to be decriminalized because once the drugs become criminalized once again, there goes all that free money that they were getting for the so-called imaginary programs that they so-called have.
There's over 20 million people in recovery in the United States. I'm one of those people. People can't change their lives. We have to believe that they can.
I'm one of those people.
Hey everybody, this is Chris Olson, candidate for Portland City Council District 2. A few weeks ago, the Oregon House and Senate passed House Bill 4002, which affected...
I swear to God, that looks like Chucky. That looks like Charles.
Effectively undid Measure 110 and recriminalized drug possession in the state of Oregon. This could be devastating for our BIPOC and homeless communities. This could keep people in a cycle of going to prison, coming out of prison over and over again. And it's just really undoing the will of the people in the state of Oregon.
Well, some advocates think recriminalizing drugs
okay,
is
what? Let's go back to this dude.
Is their lives. We have to believe that they can.
Hey everybody, this is Chris Olson, candidate for Portland City Council District 2. A few weeks ago, the Oregon House and Senate passed House Bill 4002, which effectively undid Measure 110 and recriminalized drug possession in the state of Oregon. This could be devastating for our BIPOC and homeless communities. This could keep people...
What the fuck is BIPOC? So this advocate right here wants the drugs to be decriminalized. An advocate. That's not an advocate. He's part of the Ponzi scheme. He may not be getting a big chunk of money, but he's getting a little bit of money somewhere. Yeah, he's getting them bonuses. This could keep people in a cycle of going to prison if they undecriminalize. Y'all should see this dude.
Start building rehabs instead of prison.
His name is Christopher Olson. And he's running for something, or he did I don't know when this interview came out, but this dude looks creepy. This dude looks like something I would not let my kid be left alone with.
In a cycle of going to prison, coming out of prison over and over again, and it's just really undoing the will of the people in the state of Oregon.
Oh, get the fuck out of here, dude.
Well, some advocates think recriminalizing drugs is the wrong move and stand behind the ideology of the original bill. let's take a look at what supporters hoped Measure 110 would accomplish.
I don't know what I'm having for dinner.
Ultimately, what Measure 110 did was it started to create the public health approach that the voters wanted to addiction.
Oregonians are in a state which is near last when it comes to access to substance treatment and have really high rates of incarceration.
So this is a picture of me when I first got arrested. And when I voted for it, I was like, absolutely, people should get another chance at recovery.
People in possession of a small amount, there's an opportunity for them to not be arrested. Instead, those folks are given $100 ticket, or they are given the opportunity to get a voluntary health assessment that will connect them to a broad range of services.
Measure 110 also diverted hundreds of millions of dollars into addiction and harm reduction services from the cannabis revenue account. So unfortunately, the state was slow to fund those services and get the funds out. And
so you take funds from a natural plant and a legal, whatever you want to call it. We're going to take money from the marijuana dispensaries, the taxes from there, and we're going to put it towards the hard drugs. So those of us who smoke weed and only weed and no other drugs, now we got to pay for all the hardcore drug addicts' addiction. Wow.
Makes you want to go back to buying my weed on the corner.
Yep. But you can't even do that because the chance of fentanyl being laced in it. Even cross-contamination. I won't buy weed off the streets because of that. If you're a street dealer and you're selling weed plus you're fucking around with the fentanyl or shit, I won't buy from you. Because I'm not taking a chance of that fucking fentanyl being in my weed.
We'll have to go back to our home
growing
body that always supplied us with that here.
Huh.
What people saw was a lot of devastation on our streets. Measure 110 was an easy scapegoat.
Well, as we've been hearing, the majority of Oregonians believe that it didn't work.
It didn't.
I want to bring in someone who has been in the trenches on the addiction side of this issue. Tony Benzina is a recovering addict and the executive director of 4D Recovery in Portland. Tony, you work day in and day out with Portland addicts, and you do not think recriminalizing is the answer here. Why?
I don't think in and of itself it's the answer. I think we've boiled down a complex issue, but I was opposed to the framework in which Measure 110 was designed. I've been organizing in Oregon for a very long time. And the idea that you could simply take a hands-off approach to people who are addicted to drugs like I was and allow them to make a choice eventually doesn't give them an opportunity to have an intervention to get into recovery like I did. I got into recovery through the criminal justice system, but I also went to treatment multiple times, like you had said, sometimes voluntarily, sometimes not. And the vast majority of scholarly research shows that voluntary treatment and compulsory treatment have very similar outcomes. So I don't think the
Democrats and their followers are very violent people.
question is it one or the other? It's a combination of the two. Measure 110 did fund a lot of peer services, which I know personally works. And then there's plenty of education and research that shows it's efficacious as well.
Is it working based on results? Is it working?
No, and I was opposed to it from the beginning. And I actually just want to thank our legislature and our governor as well for coming together and doing what I think is the best approach, which is to have multiple intervention points and actually have a cross-sector collaboration where you have public safety working with healthcare together to minimally use the criminal justice system to divert people to the healthcare that we know can change their lives. And then there's an assortment of services that help people. Then you can have residential treatment who meet that criteria. You can have outpatient, sober living, peer services. I'm really grateful that you're having this conversation tonight.
And here's my point. Harm reduction programs that I have seen in the United States don't lean in enough to the treatment aspect. They lean into a safe place to come take drugs, laser scanning to look for fentanyl to be sure you're not going to poison yourself, clean needles so you don't get HIV or some other disease and infection. And there's somebody at the end of the hall in the office on the right that will talk to you about rehab if you want to. To me, That's the wrong emphasis.
Uh-huh.
And they say, look, we're very successful. We haven't had an overdose death here in 11 months. Well, of course you haven't, because you're screening the drugs for them. You're giving them the needles, but you're not doing anything to
get
keep
them off
from
it.
doing the drugs. And you're taking no account for the impact that it has on the family. They may have 2 children being raised by a grandparent who can't afford them, or are in the foster system and they haven't seen.
Okay, it is this simple. Go back to criminalizing it. Okay? And when they get busted with it, instead of sending their asses to jail, the amount of time that they would spend in jail, send their asses to treatment. Instead of jail, send them to treatment. People can sit there and say, well, it's no difference. In jail, you're not getting the help that you need. You're just sitting in a cell doing nothing except thinking about how you're going to get your next fix when you get out. So fuck all that shit. They get busted with drugs, send them to like 3 months inpatient treatment.
Well, okay, here's the other one that we always touch. Logan.
Oh yeah, and
tax money.
Addicts that are on Social Security. I think it's time that motherfuckers start being drug tested. Marijuana obviously is legal, so you can't penalize us. But for all the fentanyl, heroin, meth, all that shit that's in your system, take them out. Take their check away. I know way too many people out here on the streets that have Social Security, and all they're fucking doing is taking that money and buying more drugs with it.
The taxpayers' money again. They're getting handed a check because they acquired schizophrenia on these drugs. Now they get a check. What do they do with that check? They turn right back around and go out there and spend that tax-paying check on more drugs.
Oh.
And for 3 years, those things don't get leaned into. The outcome criteria is we haven't had any overdose deaths. There's not enough focus on the rehab part of it. Now, if somebody's ready, then yes, but harm reduction is harm management. It's not harm reduction, and there's a big difference there. Tell me I'm wrong.
No, I would agree with you. I was a big opponent to Measure 110. I was part of the front lines against it from the very gate. Like you're saying, if you have a public health paradigm, which is intended to reduce the transmission of communicable disease and keep people alive, that is different because it's a population health perspective than a clinical treatment intervention, which is focused on how do we get this person, myself, who's addicted, as healthy as we can, get them off the drugs, the things that are hurting them, so that they can have a transformation in their life. Because there's over 20 million people in recovery in the United States. I'm one of those people. People can change their lives. We have to believe that they can. We have to push them to change.
She's mocking him, but he wants the drugs to still be decriminalized. I think he's still an addict in there somewhere. Because I'm sorry, but someone that's like wanting help would be like, no, we need to go back to criminalizing. Because when it was criminalized, people weren't doing it so openly. Yeah.
And what we don't want to do, and I don't think Oregon wants to do this, we don't want to take drug addicts and put them in prison. That's not what we're trying to move towards. And so we're trying to find that balance.
Just put them in treatment instead.
And trust me, jail is not rehab. I respect what you're saying. It sounds to me like you get it.
Yeah.
Coming up, this experiment caused a spike in overdose deaths and a spike in crime. We're going to talk to the sheriff who says he is on these streets every day, and he calls Portland a dumpster fire. That's next. The lawmakers passed a bill in Oregon that decriminalized possession and use of small amounts of deadly hard drugs Advocates supposedly hoped the bill would reduce drug overdose deaths, encourage addicts to seek treatment, create fewer racial disparities in the health and criminal justice systems, lower rates of incarceration, and create safer neighborhoods for all. Well, they gave it a go for 3 years, and the opposite happened. Surprise, surprise. I want to speak to Sheriff Travis Johnson. First off, thank you for your service. You guys stand in the gap between us and those that would do us harm, and to Sheriff Travis Johnson. First off, thank you for your service.
Why does he have a sheriff all the way from Eastern Oregon and not fucking Portland? This sheriff is all the way from Malheur. Isn't that like Ontario and shit?
No, that's southeastern, central south.
Because Huntington's in Malheur County.
Oh, okay, then it's gonna be the
Ontario.
central east side of.
So why does he got a sheriff all the way from Eastern Oregon when, well, maybe it's worse there or something. I don't know. No, he's wearing the uniform, Malheur County Sheriff. Not Multnomah, not Clackamas, not Washington.
Between us and those that would do us harm, and I appreciate your service every single day.
You're very welcome.
You've certainly had a full-time job in Portland. What's actually happened in that city?
Well, I'm the sheriff of Malheur County, so fortunately I'm a little ways away from Portland. However, we see the damage that's going on in Portland, and those same policies are hurting small town rural Oregon just as bad. We see the same rates of overdose. Our increase in homelessness has just skyrocketed. People from out of state coming in for drug tourism, and they're bringing campers and parking them everywhere, and they're surviving the best they can, but still using, and they're coming to use.
You say since M110, your team.
And that's why we get treated like shit, because everyone's assuming we're coming from somewhere else in the country to come here to do fucking drugs, and it's not even that. It's the rest of the country. But again, it all comes down, it wouldn't be that way if people didn't fucking vote for that shit.
Responds to calls on overdoses on a weekly basis, emergency calls for Narcan daily, right? To try to neutralize the drugs that they're taking.
Correct. In our county, we're actually a smaller county. We only have a population of 30,000 people in our county, and it's a almost daily operation to go to an overdose. Oftentimes, by the time we get there, they've already administered Narcan, and at times they don't even let us in the house to check on the person that's overdosed. We don't know if there's a dead body in there. We don't know if they're really okay or what's going on. So fortunately, we have Narcan. It's one of those things that I believe enables a little bit. I'm a big promoter of it. We need to have it. All of our deputies carry it because it does save lives. However, I do feel like it gives a false sense of security to users at times and promote.
Thank you. Finally, someone from law enforcement who agrees with the same fucking shit we say about Narcan. It just enables it and prolongs the death. Basically is what it comes down to. He ain't saying it prolongs the death, but basically that's what it comes down to. You're just prolonging a death. When someone's on a mission to not want to exist on this planet no more, they're going to succeed at it one way or another. I know, because we pled with my brother to not end his life. But again, if he wasn't on the fucking drug, he probably wouldn't have had those fucking thoughts. But since, Democrats like open borders and decriminalization of shit, it is what it is, I guess. I don't know. But I'm fucking hating all this shit.
Some more dangerous behavior.
Yeah, how many times can you really Narcan somebody until they're not who they were before? I mean, aren't some of these people that you're seeing being Narcaned over and over?
Yes, some of them are. Some of them aren't making it. Obviously, with the numbers you showed, we have a lot of people dying. I've witnessed it. It's very traumatic. It's sad for the families to have to go through that. So, I'm grateful.
It's not sad that families have to go through that. It's horrific that families have to go through that. They need to choose different words because sad just makes it sound like they're just going to slap a band-aid on a fucking wound and that's it. You need to you need to say words that are going to fucking penetrate someone's fucking mind and heart. And to sit there and say, it's sad, no, it's horrific to anyone who's lost someone due to drugs. It's a horrific thing to
ignorant government.
Exactly.
That we have House Bill 4002. It gives us some direction. It's just the beginning of the fight, though. There is the funding bill of approximately $211 million attached to that, which is going to hopefully bring some of the.
Wow, did you hear that big amount of money? $211 million to go towards whatever kind of program they want to start funding for help.
Which is only a drop in the bucket compared.
Well, that $211 million ain't even going to make it to the programs because it's just another Ponzi scheme. People need to stop trusting a corrupt government. All our government officials have all these programs, but no one's there's no positive results from any of them because there's no money to fund these. Yeah.
Facilities we need because we don't have the rehab, we don't have the mental health facilities, the capacity to take care of all these folks that we're going to have to start rotating into those facilities.
Dr. Phil, one of the reasons we were able to pass 4002 was because of the sheriffs and the chiefs of police and the DAs who all stuck together, and we said we're going to be aligned with law enforcement and we're going to do what they need in order to be able to have an impact in our local communities. And if it wasn't for them, we would not have 4002 today.
What do you expect it to do with a drug situation?
Again, in my opinion, it's just another Ponzi scheme to suck your money from the taxpayers. We're getting poorer and poorer, and the fucking politicians are getting richer and richer. Richer and richer and richer and richer.
So I just want to thank the sheriff and his associates.
Coming up, an Oregon mother who lost her 16-year-old son to a pill laced with fentanyl. We're going to hear his story next and explore if recriminalizing drugs in Oregon could get drug dealers like the one being charged with her son's murder off the streets. That's next.
Up in Capitol Hill.
Yeah. Well, no, here's the thing. I've been saying this you've heard me say this for last couple decades, that for any one person who dies from a drug overdose, the drug dealer needs to be held accountable for it as well.
Pat on the hand.
Because people, the dealers ain't being reprimanded, or they're just
going off to kill somebody else's child.
Look, when I used to do my hustle back in my day, I used to sell to fucking lawyers and doctors and teachers. I didn't fuck around with these fucking people out here on the streets. I had a certain clientele. So I know the shit, people. And the people that got money are the ones that are getting away with the very fucking shit that we get in trouble for. Why don't you put these rich people in prisons? They got plenty of money. Hell yeah. Start punishing these fucking rich motherfuckers. Movie stars, singers, fucking politicians, doctors, lawyers. Start punishing them all. They're the ones getting away with everything. Trying to punish a poor person, that's like squeezing blood out of a fucking turnip.
My son Griffin passed away 2 years ago, and he was only 16. I was woken to his father telling me to come quick. Investigators told us that they had found these pills that look exactly like oxys. He had been poisoned by fentanyl. The man who sold the drugs that my son purchased needs to go to prison. If House Bill 4002, which recriminalizes drugs, leads to getting fentanyl off the streets, then I'd be for it. Something has to change.
Fentanyl has become a huge problem in Oregon, but the issue is not just with addicts. There are criminals selling counterfeit pills. And that's what happened to Carrie's son, Griffin. Carrie, I'm so sorry for what happened. And this happened how long ago?
It was 2 years ago.
Do you know how the pill was secured?
Yeah, we learned after the fact he went on Snapchat, which is apparently where a lot of teens are getting drugs. He didn't know it was fentanyl.
And that's because
I was going through Facebook. I don't have that account no more. But I was going through Facebook for mine. I never used my phone number, no nothing for,
And before that,
for
you
text
know what it
messaging.
was?
Pagers.
My-
Oh.
That was a teenager site.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is I made a troll account for Facebook and I used their private messaging. I never gave my phone number out to no one. I gave everyone this fake dummy account through Facebook, and that's how I did it.
Because 100% of the
That's
bills
why
coming
you always
across
saw
the
me on the
border are
fucking computer and
counterfeit.
shit.
Over 40% of them are laced with lethal doses of fentanyl. And nobody knows that.
Yeah, he thought he was buying
Oxycodone. And when they checked his blood on autopsy, was there any oxycodone in it?
No, it was all fentanyl. It was just poison.
And that's why it really rankles me when people talk about fentanyl overdoses. This wasn't an overdose, it was a poisoning.
Right, he was killed.
Somebody says, I'm giving you A, and they give him Z, and he's poisoned at that point.
And the drug dealers
And
once again get
if
away with
drug
it.
dealers, I mean, this is a playground for them under 110, right?
When we would arrest someone with dealer amounts of drugs, scales, packaging equipment, money, ledgers, in Oregon, we weren't able to charge them unless we had an actual delivery that we were able to witness. You know how hard that is to do? So I'm very grateful for that fix in this ballot measure that we can start going after that again.
House Bill 4002 fixes that. We changed the statutory definition to make it clear that when you have all of this equipment, you are a drug dealer and you can be charged with it. We've also strengthened the sanction, the penalties for drug dealing. But it's also important to know that by recriminalizing drugs, we're not simply saying we're going to deal with it with a criminal penalty. We have to have that compassion of care and treatment. We've set up a continuum of care, but we've given law enforcement the authority to go in. The sheriff mentioned you arrive at the house of a person who's drug affected. They don't have the right to enter because it wasn't a crime to be drug affected.
Well, and in Portland, we just were 48th out of 50th in terms of police per capita.
Well, there was a defunding of $27 million.
That's right. Yeah, by Portland City Council.
Yep. That's why it's so important that we re-engage, especially.
And all Democrats. It's been the Democrats who's been saying this whole time, defund the fucking police. But yet they're the same people turn around calling the police on the people that they said it's okay. Your crimes are good as long as it's not against me. I mean, look at Nancy Pelosi's husband. The guy literally sat there and waited for the police. He didn't want no one else taking the credit. I would have done the same thing. I knocked you out. My name's gonna be all over the fucking media on this one.
With the National Alliance for Drug Endangered Children, so we can train people to recognize the situations with Griffin and others, so it doesn't happen to anybody else's kids.
But now we have a chance. We have a chance to tell the kids, wait a minute, we've criminalized this because of how much it can harm you, and that's an important message.
That's true, but
But you have to suppress the behavior that's going on. It's kind of like your house on fire. You got to put out the fire that's burning, and then you can work on fire prevention. Coming up, our next guest says Measure 110 not only launched her addiction, but amplified it. We'll talk to her when we come back. Ebony says once Measure 110 was passed, she felt unstoppable. She says she could do any drugs anywhere and have no consequences because she knew she could get away with it. She spiraled into addiction, became homeless, had her daughter taken away, and even fell into a meth psychosis. And Ebony, you now work with Tony, right?
Correct.
And you say the cops weren't doing anything about you doing meth in the street, and that amplified your using.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I first started dabbling into methamphetamines, Measure 110 had just broke out. But of course, I was already hanging out with addicts, full-blown addicts at that time. So the information that was passed to me was from somebody who obviously doesn't like follow policies and, politics and stuff like that. So the information that I got was, it's completely legal to use. And I was like, what do you mean? They're like, yeah, you could just be outside and using. So of course, we tested that theory. And it was 100% true. I'm at the bus stop, I'm wherever. At that point, I didn't care, and I thought it was cool, and I thought it was cool.
Yeah, and there was no shame. You weren't hiding it. Just
no, I grew up, in middle school and stuff, smoking weed in the bushes and the alleyway, right? And then now I'm this full blown adult doing hardcore drugs, and I didn't have to hide. So of course I didn't have shame at all. I thought I really felt unstoppable.
Does anybody need to hear any more? I mean, that just sums it up. That says it all.
Yeah, there's many times I got pulled over and I was terrified. I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna go to jail for drugs, but they gave it back. So
yeah, gave it right back to you. Now, George McCleary is a realtor and broker in Portland who has experience dealing with addicts as he tries to live his life. And he recently went viral for showing the negative effect Measure 110 has had in his city. Let's take a look.
3 ways to address the homeless problem in Portland that you might not have heard before. Number 1, repeal Measure 110 and make hard drugs illegal again. Since its inception, overdoses have skyrocketed 500% and addicts have been left to languish. It's estimated that 80% of the homeless population are drug addicts. Giving them a free needle and a tent only makes the problem worse. Repeal 110 and force addicts into the system. Number 2, fund this system of enforcement and treatment. Reappropriate these funds to mandatory drug treatment and mental health services and administer them in the sanctioned homeless camps that are already in motion. This is a drug crisis, and we need to start treating it like one. Enforce the law on drugs and camping, arrest offenders, force them into treatment and counseling, and lock them up if they don't follow the rules.
George, thanks for being here.
Thank you, sir.
You loved living in Portland.
I still love living in Portland.
I'm glad to hear that, because you think it can come back?
I absolutely do. I'm living and raising my family in Portland. I do my business in Portland, and I have a massive stake in the success of Portland. And all of this is done from 110 is create an environment of lawlessness and chaos that isn't just about drugs. It's about other types of crimes that are affecting everybody in the city. And I felt that in my family, with my neighborhood, citywide. And it's been heartbreaking to see because everything that made Portland great in the first place is all still there, but it's all covered with a layer of ugliness that needs to be done away with.
Yeah. And when we talk about drug tourism, people coming into Portland, there's also been a mass exodus out of Portland. because of what's going on, and that affects business and a lot of things, right?
Absolutely. All you need to do is just take a quick tour of downtown and you see the amount of businesses that have moved out of the area. And because of this, the economic opportunity for Portlanders has
You know what's really fucking weird is that when we do come up here every couple years and stuff up here to Portland, and then in those couple years we sit here and we hear on social media how fucking horrible Portland is. Like he's saying all the businesses that aren't in downtown Portland. The last 2 times that I've been down there this month is busting down there. There's no empty buildings. There's businesses in every place.
See, and that's the media.
Exactly.
Every time we hear Portland's in chaos because of drugs, homelessness, whatever, they're showing it to everybody like there is chaos up here. We get up here and
it's normal.
Like the 20 years that we lived here before all this drama started. It's normal. When we were here several years
I went downtown Portland in the midst, amidst the George Floyd's bullshit, right? I went downtown Portland. Yes, they have the whole federal court building blocked off. You can see the graffiti on it. But when I was down there, there were still protesting down there, but it was peaceful. It was, everyone sitting in the middle of the road that was blocked off for all of us to, listen. We all sat like little kids at assembly. We all sat on the ground with our, sitting Indian style and, listening to the people, tell their stories. And it's like, this whole time I'm like, well, where's all this violent protesting that the media and shit has said that's going on? I'm so fucking tired of the propaganda.
Down, it's diminished. And it's heartbreaking to see business owners who have put their heart and soul into their businesses see their dreams dashed by a failed policy.
Does 4002 go far enough?
I think it's a good place to start. There needs to be a higher police presence. Right now, as Kristen pointed out, we're 48th out of 50 states in the union in terms of police presence. There needs to be more patrolling. What we need is an overall law enforcement policy that is sensible. The origin story of 110, it all happened in 2020 when there were riots and the city was being laid to waste by thugs who were sanctioned and supported by city leaders. And what that did is it brought all the bad guys in. If you're not going to get in trouble for smashing windows and acting a fool and breaking the law, it's going to attract more. And so what 4002 does is it creates a framework to have both a carrot and a stick. If you want to get clean, you can. There's going to be resources that are at your fingertips. But if you don't, then there needs to be consequences. There needs to be jail at the end of it. It doesn't have to be a lot. Back in 2019, it was a Class B felony to get stuck with heroin, and that's up to a 10-year prison term. And I don't agree with that. And that's one reason why 110 passed. But we swung way too far in the opposite direction. And so luckily, we've been able to undo a lot of that harm with 4002.
Coming up, my final thoughts. We've been talking about decriminalizing drugs. I think there was a time when if anybody had even brought that up, people would have thought, what are you talking about? These are dangerous drugs. They rob people of their life. They rob people of their soul. They rob people from their families. They lead to addiction. They lead to death. We don't want to make these easier for people to get. I've written a new book called We've Got Issues. This is exactly what I'm talking about when I say we've got issues. I think we've got people, and I call it the tyranny of the fringe, that are pushing narratives in this country that just don't make sense. When we through policy, condone drug abuse, it impedes the ability of people to think well and act responsibly. We've actively encouraging a habit that destroys bodies, minds, and lives, and which harms families and communities. We might even be encouraging drug abuse by offering a free-for-all, zero consequence situation. And decriminalizing hard drugs is normalizing hard drugs.
Yep.
And I believe Oregon is taking a step in the right direction and righting this wrong. And hopefully these new policies will help save even just one.
They shouldn't have had to right a wrong, though.
Responsible for
Person's life so that no other mother has to go through what Carrie had to go through. Listen, I've been at this a long time and understand, I get that drug addiction is a disease. And I said it earlier, it is a disease and it needs to be treated as a disease.
It's not a disease.
These aren't bad people. These aren't evil people. These are people that they do have a disease. They need treatment. And the question is, what is the best way to protect them from themselves? What's the best way to protect their families from this toxic presence, the children? And it requires motivation. It requires accountability. It requires available resources for them to get treatment. This is a complex situation, and to suggest that there's one solution, one just tap something on the top and it's all fixed, would be way oversimplifying the problem. And I don't mean to suggest that. I'll tell you this, decriminalizing these toxic substances is, in my opinion, insane. That is not the way to do it. I think legalizing marijuana makes no sense. Everybody say, oh, it's just marijuana. Let me tell you, the marijuana that's being legalized today, it ain't your grandma's marijuana. That was 4 or 5% back then. Agricultural science has made it very different today. I interviewed a woman that had a psychotic break on marijuana and stabbed her boyfriend 108 times.
And she was on something else
during a psychotic break from marijuana.
She was
We
smoking
just
that
have to be
spice.
commonsensical about this stuff. We do have issues. And I'm talking about in this book how to fight for America's soul and sanity. And we need to do this together. We're all in it together. And the police need to be police. They're not drug counselors. That's not their job. And defunding the police $27 million, history will not be kind to that decision, I can assure you. In closing, I want to take a moment to honor Carrie's son, Griffin Hoffman.
Griffin had a big heart. He was such a pleasant addition to any room he was in. Griffin really affected so many people when he was here, and so many people loved him. Griffin was an extremely good tennis player. His tennis coach started a foundation in Griffin's name to provide $5,000 worth of scholarships to 2 students in Griffin's class. I just miss him so much.
You know, Carrie, grief is when you have love in your heart with nowhere to go. You will never dishonor or lose your love for him. If that love begins to find its way out of your heart someday, you'll never get over it, but you'll find a way to get through it. And I hope that day arrives for you.
Thank you.
Soon as you move one foot in front of the other. I'm sorry this happened. I want to thank all of my guests today. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
And you know what sucks about once you become an addict, you're never the same person even after recovery. You're not that same person you were.
Those memories.
You're not the same person anymore. you've changed for life. So, thanks for coming out and hanging out again, everyone. I want to go find something else to watch too. So, hope you guys enjoyed this one too. So, thank you. And have a blessed day, you guys.